I'm making this video to address the growing wealth gap in the United States. I'm using free trade with other countries as a predictor for where that wealth gap will go. The first one I'd like to look at is NAFTA, entered in 1993 between the US, Mexico, and Canada, exited in March of 2020. Okay. So during that time, it does take a few years for production to shift down. So I like to look at these numbers. But before NAFTA, what we see is the most wealth growth was with the poorest groups in the United States, with the upper group still gaining wealth, but not near at the rate as the poorer groups. After NAFTA, we see the top 5% grow massively in wealth, with everyone else growing in wealth, but not a lot. Then from Great Depression on, we see actually the bottom 80% lose wealth. It doesn't give the first 5% on this chart, with the top 20% still gaining wealth during the Great Recession and on. Then we look at the statistic for the actual growth and wealth gap. Okay, around 1980, we see it start to spread and we see the wealth gap really start to grow. 1990s, we see it start to grow at an even faster rate. So, what are the two things that happen? Well, first, I like to point out trade with China. During the 80s, we had a bare deficit trade with China, whereas currently we have a massive deficit trade with China. Mexico, 1993 is when we enter NAFTA. So, in 1993, we actually had a surplus trade with Mexico where we were making money off trade with Mexico. We entered the trade agreement. Short time later, we become negative. And then we fast forward to today, and now we're in a massive trade deficit with Mexico as well as China. Well, all this to say the cost of living in the United States has increased 184%. However, our incomes have not increased 184%. The top earners have only increased 130%, which is far more than the rest. However, nothing keeps pace with the cost of living in the United States. So, why is this important? Well, I look at the fall of the Roman Empire with economic problems, a widened gap between rich and poor. To avoid the taxmen, many members of the wealthy class fled so they didn't have to pay taxes, which we currently see today. Another thing was massive trade deficit, which we do have with two countries that I just pointed out. Massive trade deficits, not only this year, but it's been happening for the last 20 to 50 years. Then I look at the poverty line from 1992 to 2020. We know it cost 184% more to live here. The poverty line's actually increased 187%. So our poverty line's keeping up, yet we have less people in poverty, even though the lowest fifth is making the least amount of money. So how is that? Well, we actually just pull a lot more people out of poverty today than we did then. So these are the reasons why I think the wealth gap should be addressed and fixed, and we should really evaluate our trade deals with other countries.